Good evening, I'm Chris Henson. Katerina is away. Here's what's making news right now.
There's a lot of barriers to infill development, which is why a lot of home builders just want to do single detached in a greenfield.
If the infestation is bad enough, it can decimate the vineyard. In other words, all of the vines won't last through the winter.
One thing that we thought was really lacking was representation for characters that have a disability.
Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight in Essex County, where wineries are on edge. They're on the lookout for an invasive species that's been wreaking havoc on grape crops in the United States. The spotted lanternfly kills plants by sucking sap from leaves and stems. But one of their plants that they love to feast on is grapevines. Jacob Barker reports that just last week they were found in Michigan for the first time.
You can see we're in veraison, so it's going from green to red.
Charles Walters always has his eye out for strange insects in the vines at Oxley Estate Winery near Harrow. He says if the spotted lanternfly were to infiltrate, the effects on business could be profound.
It's as much wine as well as the quality of the wine, so we're able to make some pretty fantastic grapes here, but if we can't get it to full maturity and with appropriate levels of sugar, we can't make good wine.
The bug originates in Asia. It was found in Pennsylvania 8 years ago. State officials in New York recently asked for millions of dollars in federal funding to deal with infestations there. And now the lanternfly has appeared in Pontiac, Michigan. That raises big alarm bells for Walters.
So far, there's no silver bullet for protection or eradication, so we're a little bit anxious about this one.
Researchers say the bug is an excellent hitchhiker, so they see its arrival in Canada as inevitable. But catching it early is key. So they're watching spots where vehicles that cross the border might end up, such as truck stops.
We see license plates from everywhere, so anyone that's parked their car somewhere by a tree, it may climb onto it, maybe underneath, maybe in the wheel well, something like that. That's how things get here.
Balsillie is posting information and traps at sites on Pelee Island and the Windsor Harbor to hopefully catch a first sight of the bug. She says there are about 70 such locations they've identified, from Windsor to Niagara, and even as far away as Ottawa.
Well, if you don't look, you don't know what you have. And with some of the other invasive insects that we didn't know we needed to look for, then by the time you see so much damage, I think of brown marmorated stink bug, or spotted wing Drosophila, emerald ash borer. There's been quite a few of them in the last, since everybody's traveling, then things are coming back. And so they've caused huge losses for the areas that are affected.
Anyone who does spot the bug is being asked to report it to the Invasive Species Centre or the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, but Walters is asking people to go one step further.
First thing to do is to kill it. We want it dead, and then tell us where you found it, or tell them where you found it, so it can be properly tracked.
Jacob Barker, CBC News, Harrow.
Ontario will likely miss its lofty goal of building 1,500,000 homes by 2031. That was part of Doug Ford's push to end the housing crisis. A report released this week says the province will miss that target. Here in Windsor, Essex, population projections suggest that we need 30,000 homes by 2031. This report says that we need to double the rate of new builds compared to recent years, saying that we need about 10,000 new homes. That's how much we're short compared to the demand right now. Sarah Sipkar lives in Windsor. She works with a national program focusing on finding spots for ADUs, additional dwelling units. We took a tour of a downtown block to see if the answer to that shortage can be found in plain sight.
Well, one of the things I think about is that there's so many different types of housing, and so I start thinking about units. And so one of the things that an ADU does is that it's a smaller unit, but it's still a contained residence. And now that we allow for those units, when you see the number 30,000, I actually start thinking, well, we actually have a lot of that space. With our ADU search project, we found that in Windsor, there's 29,000 lots that would be greenlit for additional dwelling units, detached ones, and so that's not even thinking about the ones that could be internal. So when you think about that and you think about the 30,000 number, it's like if you were able to convince maybe a third of homeowners to build an additional unit, whether it's, you know, like a detached one or if it's even a basement suite, that would alleviate a lot of pressure, particularly on the rental market. This type of housing is a great example of missing middle. You can put, you know, a few units in one building as opposed to just one single family home. In this case, you could do a single family home with 2 ADUs, so then you have effectively 3 units. And so again, it's really about creatively thinking about housing differently. So thinking about how we can fit more units in a smaller space, especially in our core neighborhoods, that's really where we can get a lot of bang for your buck.
What are some of, I guess, the barriers from preventing that infill project from taking off?
There's a lot of barriers to infill development, which is why a lot of home builders just want to do single detached in a greenfield. With this one in particular, for example, like there's a lot of zoning variances that a builder would probably have to get, or I should say the developer. For example, the setbacks might be a problem, parking might be an issue, but not only those actual barriers, there's the whole process. So the regulatory process takes quite a while, especially if you have to jump through those hoops. And so I know, for example, this build has been going on for over a year, and it is quite frustrating because these types of builds can be, you know, 120, 150 days. They don't need to be this long.
You looked at the report. What do you think it means for a city like Windsor?
So for a city like Windsor, I think we need to think about housing a bit more creatively. One of the things that report didn't talk about was the types of housing that we need. So I think we need to dig into that a little bit more, do a little bit more analysis of the market. What are the demands? I would suspect that we have a lot of single people households who potentially want smaller spaces. They probably want more walkable neighborhoods, and that's also probably the type of person that we're trying to attract, particularly to our infill neighborhoods. We have a lot of vacant lots like this one here. I actually think this one is city owned, and we could do a lot of housing units in the core here, and that would just add density. It would add, you know, good things in an already existing neighborhood.
More details on the problem and potential solution on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. The health minister is detailing some of the changes coming to Ontario's strained healthcare system. Sylvia Jones spoke in Ottawa today at a meeting of municipal leaders. While at Queen's Park, the opposition continued to question whether more privatization is coming. Lorenda Redekop has the details.
A call for an ambulance won't necessarily mean a trip to the ER, a change confirmed by the health minister today, expanding a pilot project started in 2020.
We are moving forward with expanding these 911 models of care to more municipalities.
For example, palliative patients could receive treatment at home. People with mental health or addictions issues taken to a mental health facility. And the government is expanding treatment paramedics can provide on scene. It says hospitals and their emergency rooms are overwhelmed, struggling with a shortage of staff, especially nurses. Here's what the health minister said about what the government is doing.
These challenges require bold and innovative solutions. We can no longer stand by and support a status quo that cannot respond to the current challenges the sector is facing.
During question period, the Premier also mentioned the status quo when talking about health care, though says people won't be paying out of pocket for services.
As long as our government's here, people are going to be using the OHIP card instead of the credit card, but guess what? We can't do the same status quo. Status quo has been broken. We're going to fix it. We're going to deliver health care in a different fashion through the sectors.
It has the interim NDP leader worried about what could be coming next.
It was attacking the quote-unquote status quo. What's happened is we've had public health care that's been starved for funds, that's been treated with disrespect, that's in a crisis, and it set things up for privatization. I think that's where he's headed.
The health minister said more is coming this week on the government's plan to stay open. She says it's aimed at stability and recovery in the health system. We expect to learn more about the government's plans tomorrow. The Minister of Health is making an announcement together with the long-term care minister and the head of Ontario Health. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Getting a new passport has taken months for some Canadians because of a huge backlog. You may have seen that line at Riverside and Olette here in Windsor. Now the federal government is announcing a plan that it hopes will speed things up.
Today, I am announcing that we are expanding passport services to 4 additional Service Canada sites across the country, including here in Trois-Rivières at Quebec, in Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario, in Charlottetown, in Prince Edward Island, and in Red Deer in Alberta.
Karina Gold says people applying at the locations announced today should be able to pick their passports in 10 days. Those are business days, though. The hope is that the same turnaround time will be available at 9 or 10 other locations sometime soon. Statistics Canada has released new census data focusing on language use in this country. The agency says English and French are still strong. Certain Asian languages are growing, and Indigenous languages are seeing a resurgence. CBC's David Thurton has all the details.
Canada's two official languages are supposed to be on equal footing. But according to Stats Canada, one is in decline.
We see for French a decrease in the proportion of the people who speak, who has French as their first official language spoken.
This graph shows that over the last 2 decades, the number of people who predominantly speak French at home has increased, but Canada's total population has been steadily rising. And when you account for that, the number of French speakers as a proportion of the population has declined from 23% in 1991 to around 19% in 2021. Among Francophones, there's mixed reaction.
No, and don't worry. In 50 years, we will have to create some measures to keep our French.
This researcher isn't panicking.
The decline is not as steep when you take into consideration those people declaring more than one language.
But the federal government says it's taking action.
That's why we're moving forward with an ambitious legislation and also an ambitious action plan for the next 5 years.
Meanwhile, maybe in part to immersion programs like this, Indigenous languages are seeing a resurgence. Stats Canada says.
My hopes for these children are that they go and they practice with each other, with their peers, that they're brave and they're proud of their language.
This restaurant feeds the South Asian diaspora, serving them in their native languages, which according to Stats Canada, are seeing significant growth.
Before coming over here, I don't know that people will be speaking my language or not.
So we usually prefer English, like we are okay with English, but most of our regular customers are using Gujarati and Hindi.
Stats Canada says what's fueling this linguistic diversity is, of course, immigration. And that's at a cost to French, it says, because most newcomers opt to speak English when they settle here. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
2 migrant workers in Quebec who accused their employer of trying to overcharge them for rent have won their case but lost their jobs. They were fired along with 3 colleagues just weeks after filing their complaints with the province's Workplace Health and Safety Board. The company says the workers made comments that hurt its reputation. CBC's Verity Stevenson reports.
C'était vraiment choquant.
The workers from Madagascar gathered in this park near their apartment building to discuss their next steps.
Nous, si on est arrivé ici, c'est pour s'intégrer à la société québécoise.
We came here to integrate into Quebec society and pursue our dreams, he says. CBC has agreed to protect the former employee's identity because they fear reprisals and that speaking up could jeopardize their immigration status. All 5 had raised concerns about a rent increase their employer, food processing company Plaisir Gastronomique, was trying to impose on them. Plaisir was already taking $225 from their paycheck every 2 weeks and wanted to raise that to $300. As many as 5 people live in these 3-bedroom units. Michel Pilon helped the 2 workers file the complaints. He says the total amount collected means the company would be getting as much as $3,000 a month per unit. Quebec labor law says the most an employer can charge if it's providing accommodation is $53.47 per week, or about $200 a month. A month and a half after Pilon filed the complaints for the 2 workers, they and 3 of their colleagues received a termination letter. The letter said they had made defamatory comments about the company and alleged their claims about being mistreated were simply to obtain permits allowing them to work for someone else. Pilon says it's clear to him the employer wanted to send a message.
C'est un droit, ça, de déposer, bien sûr, des plaintes contre un employeur qui ne se conforme pas à la loi. Et malheureusement, ils en subissent malheureusement les conséquences. Ils ont été congédiés.
Plaisir Gastronomique says it charges that much because of the cost of electricity, internet, furniture, and appliances, and that though it's allowed to charge up to 30% of temporary foreign workers' salary under the federal requirements for the program, it only takes about 17%. The company says it will be fighting the case in court. Verity Stevenson, CBC News, Montreal.
An iconic Canadian retailer set to make a comeback a decade after closing most of its stores. Zellers is staging a revival. The discount chain plans to start out online, and they're going to add bricks and mortar locations early next year, setting up in select Hudson's Bay stores. Zellers hopes that Canadians who are trying to fight off inflation will be drawn to the store's low-cost reputation. Well, we want to know what you thought about the return of Zellers, and if you remember, well, of course, its mascot, this guy right here. Our Darren DiCarlo put the team to the test to ask if you know who this little buddy is.
They had a mascot there. Do you remember the name of the mascot?
Zeddy? Oh my gosh, yeah.
Does that look familiar?
Zeddy, of course. That was him. Hey? Yeah.
What do you think of Zeddy now? Like, how do you think he's aged?
Oh, he's aging better than I am. He looks good.
I think it's very exciting. It brings back some great memories. I hope they bring back the food too, because they always had a nice little restaurant in there. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Remember, there was a restaurant inside. It was a fun place to go as a family. You could have a nice break, especially during this time, back to school shopping. You didn't have to go wait at the food court, so that was nice.
I didn't have a lot of memories, just it was convenient and the prices were right. You know, it'd be good to see it come back.
Big thanks to CBC's Carrie Breen for letting us borrow her Zeddy, a prized possession I'm leaving on top of her desk. And I promise it will be left with the tag still attached in case there's high resale value. High temperatures out there and a bit of a chance for rain as well. We'll bring you a forecast after the break. Much of China is baking under a record-breaking heat wave. Large swaths of the country have been sweltering in 40-degree temperatures for more than 2 months now. China's National Weather Office, they've issued a red alert for high temperatures. Those hot, dry conditions, well, they're threatening crops, they're threatening livestock, and they've forced industries to shut down. Local authorities have imposed power conservation measures to make sure that there's enough electricity to supply homes. So-called cloud seeding operations are being implemented in an effort to actually encourage rainfall to try and replenish water supplies. Those hot, dry weather conditions continue to feed wildfires in Spain. In the eastern Valencia region, crews are battling 2 fires that appear to be converging on each other. Incredible images there. Out of control flames pushing firefighters off the front lines, forcing the evacuation of nearby communities. It's estimated that more than 3,000 people have been forced from their homes. Local firefighters being assisted by the military. The fires have burned about 23,000 hectares so far. Nearly 270,000 hectares have been burned by wildfires this year. That's 4 times Spain's annual average. And then after a summer of drought, torrential rains are soaking parts of France. Several metro stations in Paris flooded with water, the equivalent of 1 month's rain falling in just an hour. The French Weather Service says the River Seine rose by 35 centimeters. Authorities telling people to stay indoors. Dahlia joins us now for a look at the weather. What a wild ride there just to see those images, those pictures. I know we're not dealing with as much intensity here, but just a reminder of how, it's all changing.
That's right. There's so much change across the world, and even here in Ontario. I mean, earlier today there was a severe thunderstorm watch in the GTA, and usually it wouldn't make its way from eastern part of Ontario down to southwestern Ontario, but it did today. But that weather warning has been suspended and it's over. So on to Windsor and what to expect here in southwestern Ontario. Well, we are seeing some sunny conditions coming up, humidity, and then rain once again. Seasonal temperatures, really normal high is 26 degrees today, 27, and the normal low 16, and today it is 17 degrees. The current temperature in Windsor, 25 degrees today. Sarnia is the cool spot, along with Goderich, 21 degrees. So a nice cool temperatures right there, but with that humidity, it's bringing up and cranking up that heat. Windsor, 30 degrees, and then you have Goderich, and it's 25 degrees with that humidex, and that will be sticking around for the next few days. As you can see, there is that risk of a thunderstorm eventually for most parts of southeastern Ontario, but making its way tonight. The rainfall in Windsor that can be expected. As you can see, there is that precipitation activity right here slowly making its way as well, but heavier activity along in London and Kitchener. So what to expect tonight? Well, temperatures will cool down a bit, mostly clear skies for the most part. And then as you head into tomorrow and then Friday, same thing. It'll be clear skies and sunny days ahead. Friday afternoon, once again, sunshine. Make sure to go outdoors after work and enjoy that while those sunny temperatures last and those clear skies. Maybe hit up a patio. And then tonight, temperatures will drop and it will cool down. Like I said, in Windsor, 13 degrees, Leamington, 13. There is a risk of a thunderstorm, mostly scattered showers over the next few days. What to expect? Dry conditions, beautiful weather. It will really crank up the heat on Saturday, 34 degrees, but then back to those wet conditions on Sunday and Monday. So as you head back to work, you may want to bring an umbrella because you will need it. There's a 70% chance of rain and another risk of a thunderstorm on Monday, but it's okay. You got the weekend to enjoy it. So Chris, if you didn't bring your umbrella this weekend or you don't have it, make sure to bring it on Monday on your way to work.
No, this is when those prices go up, right? At the convenience store.
That's right.
Thanks for this, Dahlia.
Thanks, Chris.
Coming up, we tell you about 2 Windsor authors who have written a book after finding there wasn't something about the subjects they wanted to reach kids and talk about. That's next. U.S. Republican Liz Cheney said today she's thinking about running for president. Last night, she lost the nomination vote to run again as the Republican candidate in Wyoming for the U.S. House of Representatives. Instead, voters picked a pro-Trump challenger.
2 years ago, I won this primary with 73% of the vote. I could easily have done the same again. The path was clear, but it would have required that I go along with President Trump's lie about the 2020 election. It would have required that I enable his ongoing efforts to unravel our democratic system and attack the foundations of our republic. That was a path I could not and would not take.
A Republican senator from Alaska, Lisa Murkowski, who voted to impeach Trump while he was president, still managed to win herself a place on the ballot in November. Meanwhile, Trump supporter Sarah Palin, also from Alaska, advanced to the November midterms as a candidate for Congress. We got one more Windsor story for you before we go. 2 local authors have written a children's book to teach kids about disability. A staff member at the University of Windsor and an alumnus have teamed up to tell the story of a girl with special needs and her assistance dog. It's called Charlotte's Shadow.
So Charlotte's Shadow came about with a little girl named Charlotte and her dog, Shadow. And the idea is that he follows her wherever she goes. And so with the book, kids are really taking on an adventure. So it takes place over the period of one day, and they go throughout the town. They're mailing a letter, they're going to the library, they're going to Nana's house. And there's a surprise ending. So our young readers, they learn that Shadow is more than just a pet. So I think it's a story that everyone can relate to. So even though Charlotte is our primary character and she has a disability, it's really a message about inclusion, and it's a message about friendship and this sort of unconditional love.
Now, she also hopes that it's a story that caregivers and teachers can use in their work as well. That's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Thanks for watching. Have yourselves a wonderful night.